Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Enablement Brew podcast. I'm Carly Lehner, flying solo today because Malvina is unable to join us. I think our last episode I was unable to join, so hopefully you guys are okay with the solo host life we're living right now, the perk of the summer, I guess. But I'm here today with Ryan Staley, and I'm really excited to speak with him today. We're going to talk a little bit about AI and sales and all that fun stuff. But Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us a bit about what you do?
Yeah, no problem. Obviously, my name is Ryan, and I've been a lifer in the realm of sales prior to starting my own company. So I had every single role from door to door to boiler room inside sales rep, which was like the back then version of an SDR BDR, but I had to sell over the phone. Complex sales, and then leadership, and then I was a partner and a VP. And one of the cool things that I was able to do is grow a business unit after failing as a leader from 0 to 30 million in ARR with only 4 salespeople in 5.5 years. And so that was something cool that I did. And then at that point, really wasn't aligned with the values of the organization anymore and the leadership. And so wanted to do my own thing. And really what I do now is there's 2 core elements. One is for consulting wise, I work with SaaS founders or CROs and basically help them solve what's typically the single biggest challenge in revenue, and that's pipeline, right? How to solve pipeline and enable that all within a month that isn't attached to hiring BDRs or SDRs, and basically solve that problem in a month. And then on the other side of it, I've been really passionate about AI. When I got introduced to it from a founder on my podcast, the Scale Up Show, in November of last year, have been using it ever since. And so have a newsletter called Superhuman Revenue, where basically I deconstruct ways in which sales leaders or sales folks or sales enablement can leverage AI to do 3 core things, essentially, when it comes down to it. One is turn hours into minutes of work, turn decades into days, and then at the same time have automated execution. So those are kind of the 3 core pillars. And I'm creating a product as a result of it, just to enable it. So, because a lot of people don't have time to learn the nuances of AI and a large language model. So that's pretty much it.
Nice. Oh my gosh, sounds like you have there's probably so many things that we could talk about on this show based on your background. But first, we kick off every show with what's in your mug, because this is the enablement brew after all. So what do you have in your mug?
So, well, as you can tell, I'm a glutton for pain because I'm a Bears fan and I'm
Yeah.
a founder, right? So I'm hitting on both angles there. Pike's Place. And then I also have a little skim milk in there. And then I got turned on to, and I just started using it today, is Kick Your Acid. Have you heard of that? So
No,
like I love coffee, but there's so many negative effects of like the acidic component of it. So basically it alkalizes the coffee so that you don't have those negative effects on your stomach or your energy levels. So yeah.
Okay, I'll have to look into that because I've never heard of this. And we'll let's see if it works. Is this going to be a fad? Is this going to be like the next thing that you have to have in all of your coffees? Like, I guess we'll find out.
Well, it's I guess like not to go on a tangent, but like one of my clients and friends had a stomach issue. And so this is one of the things his doctor recommended is like, hey, the acidic stuff is really bad. This company's been out for a while too. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, just a side tangent of something that I'm jumping on. I'm a biohacking
Yeah.
nerd.
I'm going to look into that because I know there's acidity. Yeah, you're right. It can definitely help with your stomach and all of those types of things. So that's all right. Now I'm on to something. I am on a mug of tea. I think I've had like 3 coffees and a tea. So
Wow, coming in hot today. What time is it where you're at right now?
it's 3:15. I'm based in the UK, so it is in the
Oh,
afternoon.
okay.
But yeah, so I'm on tea, and my husband got me this mug for our wedding anniversary. We moved
Oh,
out
congrats.
from London to the countryside, and so it's a tube map of the Cotswolds towns, which
Oh,
is
love
kind of
that.
funny.
The
So,
tube is so valuable in the UK. I studied
oh my
there
gosh,
when I was in college, and it was amazing. So,
where did you live when you were studying there.
St. John's Wood, right by the cricket field.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't sounds luxurious. It's like the nice part of town, but there was really like they crammed six dudes, like six college dudes, in a 3 bedroom apartment, which was very small. So yeah, but it was an amazing experience overall.
Yeah. London's amazing. But we actually lived probably less than a mile from Lord's in our first
Oh, nice.
house. We were in Maida Vale. So absolutely loved it there. But we decided we needed some space. So here we are in the Cotswolds. But anyway, we could probably talk about London this entire podcast, but that's not what we're here for. So I'm super curious about the impact that artificial intelligence is having, will have on sales teams. And so, Ryan, I'd love for you to share like what your point of view is on AI and like you kind of mentioned like the three things that you can use it for, but
Mhm.
like where should someone get started if they're in sales? Maybe let's start as like an individual contributor and they're curious about AI and what it would mean for them. Like tell us more about your point of view
Yeah,
there.
would love to do that. I love it. I love it. And it was kind of like it hit me like a ton of bricks in a couple ways earlier this year. So we're July, early July as of recording this. So started using it, experimented with Dolly with my daughter because she loves like drawing and art. So we were playing with it. We're like, oh, this is really cool. Was showing it with my son as well. And then ChatGPT came out and I started using it right away. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna experiment with it a little bit and use it, right? And so I started testing it, and I'm like, okay, let me ask this question, see how good it really is, right? Because like there's things that I have deep domain expertise on that I'm like, okay, let's see how good it is. And I asked them the question; it was very specific, and it gave like the right answer. So that's kind of like how it all started. Like I was testing it based on shit that I knew that wasn't like common knowledge, and I'm like, this is
Right.
pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, so that was eye opening for me. And then I heard multiple companies that were worth $1 billion, and then companies that had basically $1 billion valuations and other things. And the founders of those companies are like, literally, this is going to be the single biggest change in mankind that we've ever experienced. And so seeing that comboed with that, not hearing the message once, but probably 5 different times from 5 different people, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's probably something here, you know? And so I started to lean hard into it. And so the way I would start if I were in sales is literally, I would look at and pick one, right? You could start with ChatGPT from a creative perspective. Bard is pretty good from like a research perspective. However,
Hmm.
one of the things I notice about Bards is it tends to hallucinate and make things up a little bit more. So it's really interesting in terms of like how you use it. So what I would do is I'd start with ChatGPT because if you look at all the products and tools, I would say 80% of them are built off of this language model or some derivative of it.
Yeah.
And so literally think about like what you would use Google for or things that you have questions or want to understand and just use that as a tool for it. Spend a half hour, that's all you need to do, and just ask it questions, ask things like you would on Google, and or even like things that you just wish you knew or for feedback, and just start there. And so that was how I would get started, and then I would try and incorporate it into your daily routine right from there. So step one, just experiment with it for a half hour and then stack results over time.
That's a really good way to describe it, especially I'm starting to think about or am using Chat GPT as a Google replacement, just like you said. Um, like, help me understand this, or can you explain this in layman's terms, or, whatever. And it kind of, you're right, it turns like hours into minutes, and that it's like super helpful for that. One of our salespeople actually uses it to find the important information out of a 10K. Like, I don't want to
Mhm.
have to sift through a 10K. Like, there's probably better uses of time. I mean, it's helpful information, but if you can ask, like, hey, can you summarize the latest earnings call from, such and such company if they're public?
Yeah.
what could I focus on in my next sales conversation with them? Like there's probably some really valuable information in there that chat gpt can help contextualize. So love that piece of advice on using it as if it were Google as a starting point.
Yeah, I mean and like you hit it. Like that's an example. Like another way to amp that up, what your rep is doing is just be like, hey, you know, apply Pareto's principle and give me the 80% of value and the 20% of time from this doc, right? And then it'll give you like a summary.
Yes.
And then something cool you could do if you're doing something like that is you could also put in a command that just says afterwards, and then finish your summary with TLDR, right? And it'll give you like the 4 point or 6 point summary of what a TLRDR summary is. So
I love a good TLDR. If anyone's listening who doesn't know what that means, it's the too long didn't read.
yeah,
It is like it's honestly the best. So all right. So if you're an IC, great. I'm going to start using ChatGPT. But what about if I'm an enablement person and I'm trying to think about how AI can help my sales team or I guess overall the business, like reach our revenue targets? Um, how would I go about doing that?
yeah. So there's like a 4 step process that I would recommend, and it's kind of the like if you implement it with your team, what happens is it's going to be the equivalent of like passive income, which sounds like cheesy and weird when people say passive income. Like when my son's like, "Yeah, I was watching this thing on YouTube about passive income," I'm like, "It's probably bullshit, right?" But it's like it's the equivalent of that, or maybe a better version of it would be like stacking investments in your team. So instead of just having your team operate as is, look at them as each getting an 8 to 20% return on top of what they're doing if you implement this strategy. So maybe
Mm.
we should call it the compounding interest strategy, right? So the way you could execute it is really simple. So what I would start off with if I was a sales leader or enablement leader is step one is do some research if you're not familiar with AI outcomes of what's possible. And I would look across a couple areas. You could look across the large language models, which is Bard and ChatGPT, as I mentioned, or like Mid-Journey or Stability AI for the graphics component of it, right?
Mhm.
And basically just identify maybe 5 use cases. Like there's a lot of content out there. Some of it's pretty broad and generic. Like I publish content on LinkedIn about like exact workflows and how it applies to the sales components on LinkedIn. But look for like information like that or other ones and show your team what's possible. Like step one is like, hey, this is what's possible if you use this. Because most of the time, people don't know where to start because they don't know what's possible, right? So I would do that as step one. You could do that in a Monday team meeting or Friday team meeting, whatever you have it, right? Show them that, walk through, get their feedback, ask for ideas, right? And then what you do is you give them assignment, okay? Over the next week, what we're going to do is we're all going to experiment this for an hour, and I want you to come back with the top 3 use cases that you found based on what you do on a day-to-day basis. Okay. So then on the following Monday, that's step two. Step three is the following Monday, you basically review all of the results that people brought back, and then everybody on the team upvotes the top 3 that are team recommendations to implement, right? And you
Mhm.
implement them. And then 4 is you iterate and you just keep doing it over and over. And it's like a super simple model to get like exponential compounding value from your team.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's pretty much how I would do that's how I approach any sort of training in general is tell, show, do, review.
Yeah.
And so incorporating like a new way of work is it's a behavior change. And so you have to show them what's possible, have them experiment, do a bit of a review, and then like rinse and repeat. So again, it's not rocket science, but you have to dedicate like the effort towards it, which I think a lot of people have maybe just tried it and then like forgot about it or what, but I really do think it's going to be a pretty big change in our industry, and you kind of have to figure out, are you going to be an early adopter? Are you going to be a laggard? You want to be an early adopter with this kind of stuff. So, um, what do you think businesses are most concerned about when it comes to AI at the moment?
Um, well, it's the demonetization, demonetization, or It's basically it's exponentially changing like what's possible at a faster rate than we've ever had before. So I think what I'm seeing is like the cost to create the reason why there's so many apps and tools that have been created in a short period of time is because there's ways to create those if you don't have that skill set, right? So you could just know the outcomes, you could have domain expertise. Like like for example, that's one of the things that I'm doing. I'm creating an AI product right now so that sales leaders, sales reps, sales enablement leaders don't have to learn how to do it, because what I'm hearing is that, like I don't have time to learn how to do it, or people don't have time to take, I've spent probably about 150 hours in the tool. People don't have time to spend 10, 20, 30 hours in the tool, right? Unless it's a part of what
Hmm.
they're doing. And there's two kind of pieces. There's a part of what you're doing, but then there's learning and innovating, right? So there's kind of like those two areas. So I would say on the product side, like there's going to be there's a flood of tools and software capabilities. That's step one. Step two is if you look at like there's a Copilot coming out in GPT-4 next week. This is what we're the week of 4th of July and right now. So next week it's coming out, and so basically what it'll do is it'll give you a junior coder that you could use for free, right? So like literally it could eliminate the need for a bulk of coders. I think it's going to eliminate the need for the bottom portion of the sales organization. Um, Not everybody, but the bottom portion, right? And I've even heard founders being like, I can't wait to start automating some of the salespeople because they're giving them such a headache, right? So like, that's a negative view, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's where people's heads are at, and so like that's what might potentially happen if you don't jump on this. And if you do jump on it, there's the opposite, right? Where like for example, I'll use it from like an individual rep's perspective. If you have a B player and you have let's say you have two B players, and one's using AI and the other's not, that B player is going to become an A player. So just by nature of them leveraging the tool, they are going to upskill, or they might even pass like an A
Hmm.
minus player and become an A plus player from that. So if you really think about that, if you leverage that across your team, you upskill the entire team in a tight time frame. And for companies that don't embrace it, they're going to get left behind.
Yeah. I mean, that's with like every sort of like technological advancement. Like eventually you have to adopt it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we're at the point where AI is definitely going to be one of those. So it's funny you said about uh, founders wanting to just automate sales or replace sales. They're tired of the human management of sales. What specifically can AI do that you think would like truly replace a salesperson?
Well, there's some of this is in the works now. Is I would say like if you look at more of the transactional sales that happen, there's going to be ways, because like there's things now where you could, and this is what I talk about with automated execution, right? There's ways where you could literally identify an outcome, and if it's constructed the right way, an agent or agents, multiple AI agents will complete that for you.
Hmm.
Now, right now, we're not totally at that point, but there's a couple ways, right? So when that comes to maturation, which is closer than people think, because I have people talking to me all the time about tools that automate SDR capabilities. I have companies that want me to work with them to do that. Um, so that's one of them. The other is look at it on the flip side. If you have a rep that's like a superhuman seller that could do 2 to 3 times what they were doing before, you don't necessarily need the bottom people in your sales organization anymore, right? Of someone who does 30% of what that person was doing before they upgraded.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at it as two capabilities. One, I think it'll make the good ones way better. And then two, there are going to be automations with that, because like you've probably seen this. There's studies where like 76% of buyers don't want to talk to salespeople, and a big reason why is because a lot of them suck right now. There's some amazing ones out there, but a lot of them suck too, right? Like I've been on the other side of it. People try to sell to me all the time now because I'm a CEO, and I have people that are like just show up to calls. They're unorganized. They have no idea who I am. They have And I'm like, dude, you're trying to sell me shit, and like you have no clue who I am or what I do or anything like that. I'm like, that's like 101. Those are like table stakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that difference is going to get bigger and bigger as time goes on, and in terms of like an A player and like a mediocre player.
Like, as an enablement person, especially, it just like really pains me to buy from a really bad salesperson.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like, and I
yeah.
just, we did end up buying a product because it was really like superior, but like, I really disliked the salesperson, and like the VP of sales at my company and I were like, this is so painful to buy from this, but what we really need the product. But in that scenario, if we were interacting with, you know, an AI agent and it was a pretty easy transaction because we knew we wanted that product specifically as well. Like, yeah, if I didn't have to interact with the salesperson there, great. However, there are times where I'm doing an RFP and I'm going out and I'm making a pretty large scale purchase and I want to hear from multiple different providers. A salesperson might actually be really helpful in that regard. So I think it's important, like, if you're a salesperson listening to this, like, yes, AI will help you do your job. It could potentially replace your job, but I think there's always going to be a need for human to human interaction, especially in the enterprise space. I highly doubt a CFO is going to let me spend $500,000 on a new CRM if I haven't spoken to someone at the company that I'm buying the CRM from, right? So I do think that there's a balance, but it is really interesting how we're already kind of seeing some ways that some of the parts of our jobs could be automated, which I think also just means we'll focus on more important things. To your point, a
Yeah.
B player could really turn into an A plus player as a result of that.
Well, let me give you an example. So let's say who do you don't tell me the person, but like what's the best sales experience you've ever had?
Um,
You're buying something and why?
yeah, so we were looking to switch platforms from a competitor of the one that sold us. Um, and this person, I mean, it's been a long time since this sale happened, but this person, the salesperson, listened to everything that we were looking for, all of our pain points, and did a really good job of like reiterating what those pain points were and challenging us where necessary. Like if we would have like some ridiculous ask, they'd be like, "Why do you need that?" Or um what outcome are you expecting from wanting a sandbox environment to play with for 2 weeks? Like what are you so challenging was actually like a really big part of that conversation, and listening to what we needed, and was able to show why their product would be able to do what we were looking for, and that sort of thing. So ultimately my boss at the time was a pretty tough cookie, and she was like, this is one of the best sales experience that I've been through. And ultimately like that person made the sale because she was able to be like, yeah, he actually made me realize that I would be a fool not to make this purchase because he's literally put it in front of my face of all the ways that we're struggling right now and how this product could solve that. Um,
Okay. Love
yeah,
that example. And so out of 10 salespeople that you've interacted with, how many of them are like that?
maybe two.
Yeah. So what if those two got way better and then instead of two, then maybe there's four, right? Or
Yeah,
five that were like that. Like that's kind of what we're talking about here.
yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's necessary, right? Like you got to adopt it. I think it's super important. All right, well, I think we're coming up on time here, but Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. And I think AI, like we've talked about on the show, is it's time to adopt it. It's going to change the way we work. It's going to change the way we probably do everything in our lives, like moving forward. But your perspective was really helpful, and like the way you kind of broke it down to make it easy to kind of experiment, and like this is like the really easy way to get started, what I think is super valuable. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the Enablement Brew today.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Really appreciate you having me on the show.
Great. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.